Hey guys, how you doing? Welcome to another Spider-Man effects video. This is your boy here, Mikey Wilson, aka the Spiderdad. This is how to draw Spider-Man in Photoshop. I'm not going to go into it in detail exactly how I did it. I'm just going to go through the steps and show you the tools that I used in order to create this particular image. The first thing that we need to do is to do the head section. Okay, and to do that I actually used the ellipse tool here, press and hold there, and you can select which one you want there. And simply drag to exactly how you want it. The next thing that I did is to add the eyes and colour in the head to the colour of Spider-Man. So to do the eyes, I specifically used a brush tool. This particular brush tool here, which is called the flat point medium stiff. Used that, and I used around about a 4 size on that, and really was quite simple to draw. However, do spend some time on it because to get the eyes right is quite key. It might take you a few times to get the right look of the lenses and so on and so forth. So, okay, and here I actually did a bit of a dome style effect on the left hand side of the lens to just give it a bit more realism, maybe even a bit more of a 3D-ish look. And to do that, what I did is I used the erase tool here and just erased that section of the head, and you just literally create a bit of a dome. And I did that by using the same brush as I had to do the actual lenses themselves. Okay, so the next section is the webbing for the head. When I did the eyes, I actually already included a dot in the middle, in between the eyes, just as a reference point for where I need to begin the webbing on the head. I've added the webbing here, and it's a very simple stroke. So I used the same brush as I did for the lenses, and with that, all I did is started from the middle here and just slowly went up, just making some nice curve marks just to give it more of a 3D-ish round feel. And then I added the webbing, and to do that it's a downward stroke and up kind of feel. Downward stroke and up. So that's the head. Okay, so the body section. I searched a load of different styles of body shapes and how he does the fingers, you know, the feet, you know, the body sections, the spider, you know, the positioning of all the webbing on the body, on the suit. And I literally just kind of created a bit of my own. I spent some time on this, I'm not going to lie, I spent a bit of time on this because I wanted to make sure it was in proportion with the head as best as possible. I think for a cartoony feel, the head tends to be a little bit bigger than the body, but I wanted to make sure that that I actually, you know, was able to create a body that would be ideal. Okay, with that, I used the same brush tool. I'm just going to create a new layer just for the sake of it, just for the sake of showing you, and just literally went through and created the forearms, the bicep, then it went over to the hand. You can literally, to be honest, you could literally go real quick just to get a rough outline, and then you can alter it however you see fit. So you could then use the brush, the eraser tool, erase that section there, for example, and then reapply to suit your needs, okay? But like I say, do spend some time on making it look as nice as possible. I duplicated the body layer, and I actually made the back layer black, okay, and the top layer for the body white. So as you can see, it gives a bit of an outline of Spider-Man, making life a little bit easier, and it's a simpler way to add a black outline to your drawing. Certainly something that I found very useful. Okay, so the next section here is the body markings. So what I mean by the body markings is all the areas dividing the blue and red sections, making the fingers look a bit more real, showing the muscle sections, all the areas within the body to make it look a bit more realistic. To do that, I used again the same brush as I've been using this entire tutorial. First, make sure that you divide the blue section and the red section of the suit. What I did there was I used the brush and just used little markings here where I thought the divide would be, essentially, if that makes sense. Then of course there's the red section on his boots and also on his waist. Okay, next was the spider. I added the spider, which was relatively simple. Just used, again, the same brush and used a dot, then added a section of his body and then added his 8 legs. Then we go to the webbing. So the webbing I've added on, let's add that in. So again, very simple. All you have to do is use the same brush, maybe make the size a little smaller, and just follow the lines of the actual limbs, for example. So let's just zoom in here. So for example, I've added the section here, section there, and it's basically following his limbs. Okay, so we're using all up here, and all these sections here, just kind of adding in lines. And then again, you're adding the webbing section to it, and it's just about repetition. Okay, so let's just give you an example. So obviously I'm just following the line, for example. I'll do another one here, and then all you're doing is you're adding in the webbing. Okay, the next section here is the colouring in. So I chose to do the red first. To do that, I made sure that I created a new layer and I put it underneath the body markings and the webbing. This allowed me to colour in without having to worry about going over the spider or the webbing or the body markings. It made my life so much more easier. Okay, so the next section is the blue colouring of that. So again, very similar situation. So I select the blue layer, made sure it's underneath the markings and the webbing, selected the colour that I wanted, and colour in the blue area. Okay, so you've done your Spider-Man. He's pretty much complete now. All we need to do now is add in some shading, some lighting sections. Okay, so this is what it looks like with all the shading and a few lighting areas, just to give it a bit more realism. I literally went off of my own personal preference. I picked an area where the light might come in, and then I just looked at the areas and thought, where would the shadow be? And I just simply added the shadow. Okay, so to get the actual shadows and the lighting and make it as best as possible, I selected all the layers, right click and duplicate layer. Hit OK, and it will duplicate it. Then I merged and renamed this body full, for example. Now I've already done this, so I am actually going to delete that. Now to add the actual shadows and the lighting section, I simply went over to this section here and I went to the burn tool. This is the tool that we'll actually use to darken the areas. So I selected the highlights in the range here and I set the exposure, let's set it to around 50. We don't want to go overboard too much. Then we expand to fit the size that we want, and then all we do is we then add in more shading to whatever we suited. Now I'm going to undo that because I've already done it, but that's what you do. You go into the certain areas where you want to make the shadow more effective and more apparent. The side of his face, for example, between his hands, underneath his hands there, underneath his armpit here, maybe a bit under his arms, on the sides of his legs, in his crotch area, and maybe on his chest where his head is actually creating the shadow there. Okay, and to do the lighting section where we can see it's a bit more lighting on certain areas, I actually used the brush tool for this. You made sure that it was the hardness was set to 0. Reduce the size down a little bit. Actually, I'm going to increase that a little bit actually. And I used the white opacity down to 20. And now I can start adding in some lighting areas to Spider-Man. Now I'm going to actually undo all those because I'm happy with the way that I did it previously, but that just gives you a bit of an idea as to how to add the lighting sections to the Spider-Man. Now the web shooters, I basically just, again, same brushes we've been using the whole time. I created a new layer called web shooters, and then I simply went over it and just basically went what I thought might look quite cool as web shooters. I based them on the new Civil War style because I found that was to be a bit more simpler, a bit more easier to add to my image. Okay guys, so that was how to draw Spider-Man in Photoshop. I hope that was of use to you. Hope it entertained you. Hope you had some value from this. As ever, don't forget to rate, comment and subscribe, and I'll see you on the next video. Take care.